want to talk a little bit about something which may interest you a little bit. It's a bit about my family and some of the different things I've seen with them financially. People used to say my uncle and my dad are like chalk and cheese, and it's very true. My uncle basically received most of the will when my grandfather died. In 1984, he borrowed a bit of money and just kept borrowing more money for more things. A lot of it was rusty old machinery and, you know, all these projects he had planned. He had planned to build several backpackers places. We even had one planned for this place that I live at now, with a backpackers hostel and a 200-seat restaurant. Had the plans drawn up and everything. They even found the plans when I cleaned the house out, actually. Yeah, he sort of borrowed and had all these big plans and done almost no work at all on those plans, and done a lot of visiting people and meandering around with plenty of free time and all that, and just used to keep refinancing. Anyway, in 1998 it all fell to bits. It went from 1984 to 1998, and it come to bits big time. He was repossessed for 4 of the 5 properties he had. The cost back then was $500,000. The value of the properties that he lost today would be about $2.5 million. And in that was the family farm and the place that my father grew up on about 320 acres. Another farm that's really what pulled him under. It was about 170 acres, I think. And then 2 houses in the city that we got in here. Then this place here. He managed to get refinanced to save this place, literally by like 3 days or 4 days or something. It was a real close shave, that one. We're very lucky that this place is still in the family name. But yeah, with money, you sort of, if you get a threatening letter from him, and it'd be all panic and stuff, and he'd be going around like a mad hatter for about a week until he got refinanced with another place and like another, bank or whatever, and then all the panic would be over. And then it'd be like the last thing in his mind. He just wouldn't think of anything about money, just last thing he'd think about. And then he'd get another threatening letter, and she'd be on for young and old again. But he never he was never good financially. To be given a lot and then lose almost all of it, is disheartening. But my parents, let's get onto that. They've been very different. They literally lived in the back of a station wagon for the first 2 years before they were married, I think it was. They were getting really thick frost on their car windscreen and that, and after a while they decided to get a caravan. But it was basically, I think it was about 2 years or something, that they lived in the back of a station wagon. During that time they saved up a lot of money, both of them worked, and they put money into some sort of government bonds or stocks or something. Basically, it was to do with the government-owned power system, and I think they must have put up money for the building of bought some sort of bonds or something that was used to fund the building of a new power station or something like that, probably. But anyway, later on, I was born, and by that time they'd sort of travelling around Australia from the southeast, and they went up to the northeast, and then sort of went across to the west, and started travelling down the coast of the west, sort of southbound, and I was born at one point there. And when I was about 2 years old or something, they decided to buy a house in the city because they're told their job was very secure and all that. Anyway, they put down a deposit of something like about 50% when they cashed out these stocks or bonds or whatever they had. They managed to get them paid out, and went and used that to cover 50% of the deposit. The remainder of the house they paid off in 3.5 years on a basic farm labourer's wage, one income only, because I was a baby, so Mum was at home looking after me. But you know, that really shows the difference. There's another bloke I used to work for who's a bachelor. He's in his 70s now. And he sort of ended up with a property about the same size as my uncle's, but he had to buy it off his father. He didn't get given it. And he is now literally a millionaire. And I look at the both of them, you know, and there's a few years difference in age between them. You know, probably about 8 years difference in age between my uncle and this bloke, but they had the same soil type, the same size farm. One of them became a millionaire and the other ditched out the equivalent of millions. That's another good example of, you know, two opposing sides that first started under similar circumstances, except my boss had to actually pay for his father's farm. Think of another one. Oh yes, there's another thing I should mention. Due to do with me grandfather's will and agreements between the family, talks between the family on that, they come to an agreement that there was a property that my father and uncle bought in halves. And what ended up happening was, as part of all the will and all that business, to obtain one thing, he sort of my uncle forfeited his half to my mum. So my parents ended up owning that small block of land. It was literally a house block on a very steep, you know, gradient, like it was a very steep block. And that was all fine with my uncle and all that. That was just part of the deal they decided on, you know, to do with the grandfather's will. So it turns out that block is in an area now that is millionaires only sort of territory. It's in the Otway region. If you ever heard of Bells Beach and all that, it's further along there. It's basically backed on the back of a temperate rainforest. You know, lovely towns, very, very, very pricey area. But they just kept paying the property tax and that and never put anything on it, never done anything with it. And now that my parents are retired, that's having that there as, let's just say that will help them financially during their retirement years. But yeah, there's, you know, all the stuff about sort of fate and all that. I'm not too fussed on all that. And it's sort of interesting because I can see great contrasts of how different family members have handled themselves financially. There's other family members that bought property many years ago before capital gains tax come in, and they've sold it recently and done very well as a result. Exceedingly well, some of them. But, you know, it's sort of, there's a lot to be said for living within your means and having a good grasp of, you know, of understanding money and all that. But, probably should throw it in here, but there's a van-dwelling bloke on YouTube who has been a van dweller for 29 years. And he's got a few videos on YouTube. And he was living in one van, and it was a 86 model, I think. And I spat the dummy on him, and he had enough money to just go buy another one in cash. And of course he went and bought a lot newer. But yeah, you know, there's a lot to be said for not overspending and being wise with money.